that VR headset can help improve your life and wellness. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us from GeniusX is CEO Nick Janicki. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Fred. How are you doing?
Terrific. Well, let's start with a little background about you and about the company.
Absolutely. And talking about VR, I do have the new Oculus Pro here, which I've been playing with over the last couple of days, which has been pretty great. But yeah,
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
It's an interesting tool. It's really a great stepping stone on where this could be or could be going. And so for me, I have a background in franchising. So I started a company called TrueRest Franchising about 10 years ago. It's sensory deprivation or flotation therapy. And what we're finding, and this is tremendous for anybody that has chronic pain, anxiety, depression, things like that. And we actually have 44 locations in 22 states. So we're one of the world's largest franchisors in that space. And so I've always been into health and wellness. About 2 years ago, I stepped down as president of that company and with a couple co-founders started GeniusX, as you mentioned, and we're creating an app called Retreat. And Retreat was really something where we wanted to create something when COVID hit. My daughter's 9 years old. She was in Zoom school. And we saw how hard it was to learn looking at a 2D screen. And so this really came from kind of looking at her. We actually, she's, about half a year behind now in her education because of COVID and all this kind of stuff. But, we thought, wow, there's got to be a better way to teach and learn. And when you go into VR, it's, in my opinion, one of the most human ways to interact with technology. And so we're trying to use technology in a way that's not for addiction, but rather creates what we're calling connection loops and enhances you as a human being as you're going through the experiences. So that's kind of the overarching why we started the company.
Interesting, and we've seen those reports about the impact of the pandemic on educational scores and things, math and reading, very disheartening. So what you have is this app called Retreat, and it's currently in the Meta App Lab. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's right. So Meta App Labs is sort of the pre-consumer launch marketplace. So this is where mainly enthusiasts that are in VR can go and download your app. They can find it by typing in the name Retreat in App Labs. Now, we are just finishing our full Meta QA. And what that means is there's less than 300 apps in the Meta Oculus store. So Meta's growing at a slower rate than I think the market would like. But what they're doing is when you're in VR, you'll see that most of the apps in there are pretty high quality. So they're getting hundreds of applicants trying to submit apps a month. And it could be more. I don't have the proprietary data, but they're only allowing a few in a month. So since the marketplace started, there's only 300 apps in the entire marketplace, which is mind-boggling. So think about the Apple App Store. There's millions of apps, right? And so we're actually one of the first apps in education. Some of the executive team is calling us the category-defining app for education. And we basically have 25 of the world's experts that we've onboarded. And basically these experts are teaching anything from financial literacy to public speaking, to how to be an entrepreneur, to breath work, to meditation, to yoga, finding your purpose in life, so on and so forth. So rather than say a 2D experience where you're watching someone talk on a video, you're now going through this basically hero's journey where you're learning this skill. The instructor can pop in as an avatar, actually interact with you, and then we're able to live stream back to social media. So it's just very immersive community of lifelong learners.
So is there some kind of live interaction with other people, other users or instructors? Describe for us how it works.
Absolutely. So if you were to put on the headset and go into the space, you'd basically look around and you'd see these beautifully designed pieces of architecture. Our world builder is a man named Michael Rice, who is one of the top bioarchitects in the world. It's also been known as like sacred geometry, but it's starting with these shapes that were found in nature, right? And then creating architecture from these. So what we're finding is when you're in these spaces, you feel better. You feel like you have a higher vibration. And when you look around, you'll see that, yes, there can be up to 60 students in a single space. So if I went and took, let's say, Nicholas Pratley's course as an example, he's teaching about the luminous body, he's teaching about energy, he's teaching about breath work. You may have 60 students going through that same course at different aspects of the course. Now, you may see Nicholas pop in every once in a while and do like a live panel, but then the beauty is you get to interact with students that are literally learning the same thing as you. So it really is kind of the best of this metaverse. I'm not going to define the metaverse because I think we're about 5 to 15 years too early in really understanding what that could be.
For those of you who are watching, here's a little video.
I'm sure you're familiar with the modern education system, as it's remained unchanged, static, and boring for well over a century. Adults learn through audio, visual, and kinesthetic input. Only virtual reality offers all three.
Why VR? How is it better than, the usual stuff that we're accustomed to, YouTube, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the striking things when you start becoming a VR enthusiast, and we are very much still in the early adopter stage of virtual reality and augmented reality. So when you start looking at statistically how many people use VR, there's research showing there's about 60 million people in the US that use VR. I don't know how often they use it, but that's still 15% less of the population. So if you look at things like Peter Diamandis's BOLD, he kind of breaks this down into the 6 Ds of disruption. So I think we're just in stage 3 of those 6 Ds, which is disruption itself. And so what happens is we're going through this early adopter stage, there's a chasm, and then mainstream society will kind of get on board. The hardware will get smaller, much like, I don't know if you remember the huge cell phones, but those were pretty ridiculous. No one thought 97% of the public would be staring at a cell phone 10 years later, right? So I think AR VR has massive potential. You're gonna have to ask me the question again. What was I went off on a tangent there?
I was asking why VR.
Okay, thank you. So much like this Zoom call. So if you're in a Zoom meeting all day, I think there's a real thing that's happening called Zoom fatigue. And what we're finding is when you go into VR, there is a sense of spatial presence with other human beings. And so the audio is spatial. So Fred, if you and I were in VR together and you were standing to my right, the sound is coming into my right ear. And there's this sense of spatialness. You can also do things that are fully interactive. So rather than just taking a quiz, I can have a bow that appears and an arrow and shoot a target. And what we're finding is there's a PwC soft skills study that was done, and they're finding that VR learners are 3 to 4 times more engaged than traditional online learning. Not only that, they retain the information better, and they have more emotional responsiveness to that information. So we're seeing this as a massive potential for being in a space where you can actually kind of concentrate. Now, what's also interesting because of VR is you're able to do something called binaural beats. And binaural beats are something where a sound goes in your left ear, a sound goes in your right ear, and your brain produces a third sound. Now, that sound can have the effect of relaxing you, can also have the effect of putting you in a brainwave state of like a beta or alpha brainwave state, which is more better cognitive learning. So we're able to actually change the spatial environment to accommodate for learning, which you really can't do in 2D.
And tell us how it's going to work when you're finally in the marketplace there. Is this going to be a subscription or a one-time price for the app?
Great question. So the app is free to download. What's really great is we have about 2.5 hours of fully free content. Then after that, you basically can buy courses. Courses are anywhere from $5 up to about $15, $20, depending on the course. Courses are 45 minutes up to 3.5 hours, but the average course is 45 minutes. So I think one of the things that was maybe missed with what's happening with Meta is you do want to be careful with things like eye strain and wearing the device for too long. So we're very cognizant of this. And so modules are basically 15 to 20 minutes. So our goal is, hey, you want to go in here for about 15, 20 minutes, take module 1 of a course, take the headset off, walk around nature, journal, maybe later that day or the next day, put the headset back on, go in for 15, 20 minutes, and take that second module. So we kind of thought through some of the negatives of the technology as well. And you don't want to necessarily be in there for hours and hours at a time, right?
So what do you feel needs to be done to bring this to the mainstream, the things like the Metaquest, et cetera?
I'm very, very interested in competition getting into this space. So I think Meta is going in the right direction. So I had a Quest 2. I've been an enthusiast since Oculus was with Palmer Luckey. So when they had a development kit. So I actually developed a full human rights museum in virtual reality in 2017, where you could literally go into the paintings and experience the full 3D world of that painting. And anybody I showed that to back in 2017 was just kind of awestruck. They just went, "Oh my gosh, this is mind-boggling. I didn't think something like this could exist." So what I love about VR is the ability to take the unimaginable and make it tangible. And so my belief is once Apple gets into this space, once AR becomes a thing, virtual reality is still very, again, it's still in the early adopter stage. So I think once the technology gets smaller, you have other people getting into this space. And now imagine with AR, you have Ray-Ban sunglasses. And now instead of having to be in this virtual reality cartoon world, let's say Gordon Ramsay appears in front of my kitchen, puts down a tomato, tells me how to chop the tomato, and I can do the very same thing. So I think this is what's going to revolutionize the world, when you can be in your full physical space and have these augmented 3D people and or courses pop into the space. Imagine someone from New York zooms into your living room and it feels like they have a real presence. So this is where this technology is going. So I think as a whole, we're judging the second or third stepping stone for the palace. And the palace is still, a decade or so away, but.
Very interesting. So where can people go to get more information about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is retreatvr.io. And there you can learn about all the courses that are being published. We're very, very excited with the course creators we have. We have some amazing experts. And like I said, these are things that, my 9-year-old daughter has gone through most of these courses. And some of the knowledge is over her head, but certainly, a 9-year-old could understand how to use this, but it's really targeted for kind of young and later adults and anybody that's a lifelong learner. So if you always wanted to learn how to do public speaking, but you were a little bit afraid, imagine standing in front of a virtual audience of 10,000 people with a coach next to you and classmates, now being able to do that in VR. Instead of flying to Bali and meeting Nicholas Pratley for $8,000, you can now put on a VR headset, be in a beautiful world with him, and have a similar experience.
Sounds terrific. Again, the site is retreatvr.io. Nick Janicki, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Fred. It was a pleasure.